The world is on fire and most could care less. So few are paying attention, and nearly all of those who are have their focus on the wrong ball. They're storing up their treasures here on earth and planning for life on the other side of what's coming, but they reject what is on the other side of the coming destruction. And they reject the truth that will deliver them through it. I ask you to consider why our Creator has allowed the massive destruction that has taken place on earth in the past several thousand years. Consider the events of 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina or the recent earthquake and following tsunami in Japan. How about all of the disease and the famine that has plagued mankind since the days after man was kicked out of the garden? The question that each of us should ask is, why is it that man has not sought after their Creator's counsel in light of all of the destruction that has occurred? Why have they made him in their image of who they want him to be instead of obeying his voice to let him teach them who he is? I remember the days immediately after 9/11 and how man's false church houses were filled up in the weeks that followed. They were filled up through the aisles and people busting through the doors. People are crying out to their God for answers, but were they really considering the cause of what happened and why it was allowed? Were they considering that it was a warning bell for something on the horizon? Were they crying out to him in truth? Or were they crying out to their make-believe version of who he is? If they were considering it was a warning bell, you would think that they would have looked thoroughly into what the warning was against. At least if they would have looked into their false beliefs with fear of being wrong and fear of not being in his favor, they might have been able to examine what the cause was, but they have not feared, and they've been right in their own eyes. The world will soon find themselves in the grips of the real and true self-existing Elohim's wrath because they have continued to turn to their image of who they want him to be instead of turning to him in truth and receiving his counsel. In Joel 1:15 he says, "Alas, the day, because the day of Yahweh is at hand, and destruction from the Almighty will come." The day is at hand. Joel began leading up to this verse by instructing Israel to tell their children of the coming destruction and tell them to tell it to their children and so on and pass it down. This has been done to some degree. People have grown up knowing of the coming time of destruction, but they have omitted teaching them why it must be. They have chosen to give themselves escape routes from it instead of turning to the only escape route that there will be. And they got all sorts of false theories, a false rapture belief, and all sorts of ways to think that they're good to go, therefore they don't have to fear. Yahweh told Joel in verse 4, "That which remains after the palmer worm has left, the locust has eaten, and that which remains after the locust has left, the cankerworm has eaten, and that which remains after the cankerworm has left, has the caterpillar eaten." Our Creator is warning us that there is going to be wave after wave of destruction to devour what survived the previous waves. We were to fear this day so that we would have remained under his protective wings. But man has not feared except a small flock. If they had, they would have turned to his counsel instead of mocking it. They would have obeyed his word if they believed that living it was conditional to remain in his favor. The United States calls themselves one nation under God. They believe that they were founded on their Creator's principle, and this is not true. He blessed them anyway because of the promises that he made through Abraham, but the United States has never been a nation that obeyed him. They were the most blessed nation in history, and they received his blessings, and they still did not turn to him in truth. They made other gods to worship. They put the 10 Commandments up in their courthouses and their government buildings and such, and used his name, but they did not hearken to his word. They worshipped other images of him. Yet he gave them his protection to a degree because he was calling out the first fruits of his family from the scattered tribes of Israel, and these tribes were gathered to the United States and the other countries that came out of the British Commonwealth. But he also continued to allow natural disasters and diseases as foreshadows of the coming destruction to keep the threat of his wrath real so that we would fear being out of his favor. Yet most would still not hearken to him, and they lived under their own counsel of deciding right from wrong for themselves, living how they saw fit. How many have there been who have lived through the past trials that actually turned to him and said, "Wow, Yahweh Elohim, You delivered me and my family through this terrible tornado or whatever. So now me and my family are going to serve you. We will obey your instructions and be made in your image through them. We will leave our lives and live in gratitude and fight to remain under your protection, and we will yield to your will to be made in your image. How many do you think there have been who have turned to him like this? Compare this question to how many do you think there have been that have given him lip service and told him, thank you for delivering me and my family, but now we will go back to our own lives. Or thank you for delivering us. Now we will continue to worship who we want you to be with more dedication, maybe even. Or we will go to church every Sunday, or we will try to be better people, etc. I would tell you this list far exceeds the list who actually turned to him in truth and sold out for his kingdom and chose to obey his word. Today, those few who are seeing the writing on the wall with what is mounting on the horizon are preparing for life on the other side of this mess. The United Nations has a seed bank dug deep into the earth to preserve the earth's seeds. There's a group of people preparing to weather the coming storm in the caves of the Ozarks or in other caves and such. Another group is planning to seek refuge in a mountain of France. And there's seeming no end to the different conspiracy theories as well. And there are just tons of people that have devised ways in different groups to see them through the coming destruction, and yet they're not understanding what the destruction's about and why it's upon us. Some of them even thinks it's their Creator's wrath, and they're still holding on to their false worship ideas and practices and worshiping him in vain. Some of them involve aliens attacking and preparation against them. Satan has done a masterful job setting up this smokescreen, and this event will most likely be played out by the puppet masters, but it is just smoke and mirrors. There are no alien that are going to actually attack us. It's just games that Satan has played, and he certainly has helped set up things within man's governments, I'm sure, to have this all play out in the coming days, and I'll probably do a video on that subject. And as I said, most are simply in a state of denial of it all, with their heads buried in the sand, because they have their hope in a false rapture theory based on false salvation doctrines, or they are convinced that their government is going to protect them. Well, there will be no protection from man that will see you through this, and your Creator is not going to rapture a rebellious house into his kingdom. As a matter of fact, he is not going to even deliver a rebellious house into the new era of time. You are going to need to repent and to turn to him in truth in order for him to deliver you. In Revelation 6 we read, "And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Because the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand?" It does not sound like hiding in the caves is going to be an option that will deliver you. Another question for you to consider is just how much destruction will you endure before you turn from your false religions? Will you blaspheme him when your children are stripped away from you, or will you take accountability for rejecting him? Will you acknowledge that your transgressions are the cause for the destruction, or will you remain self-righteous and full of pride and say that you have not sinned against your Elohim? If history is the barometer, then sadly it will take much to humble you, because the disasters of the past have actually only brought a very small flock to him. Only few have repented in the light of his deliverance through previous trials. Most of it will just look at the event through the Red Sea and how stiff-necked Israel was when he delivered all of them through that, and how quickly they turned on him. Most have simply said thank you and returned in the following weeks to worshiping him as they saw fit, and they continued rejecting his instructions, just as the incredible blessings that he has poured out on so many have only brought a small flock to him as well. You have said thank you for the blessings, but then you continue to thumb your nose at his word that would have instructed you how to live. This is so sad that man is so stiff-necked and self-righteous. And this is why there will be wave after wave of destruction unleashed on the world. Currently the crops are being destroyed by fire and by floods, but Most remain oblivious to the food supplies being destroyed right before their eyes. The plagues are being set up and nations are pitting sides. It is all happening, and no amount of food storage will deliver you, and no bunker or cave will hide you. There is only one get-out-of-jail card being made available to you, and that is genuine repentance, which is selling out your life for His kingdom's sake. It is turning from what is false and turning to Him in truth. You will need to turn from the lies of Christianity or any other man-made religion and turn to the instruction manual that He gave us. And these instructions do not include Saul of Tarsus's instructions. He's a liar and a deceiver. He's the reason why you aren't keeping the commandments. You will need to follow the instructions that will allow for His Son's blood to atone for your transgressions. This is not a game. There has never been a time like what is ahead for mankind, and all that opposes my Father's will to build His family will be purged out in the coming months. On July 18th, 2012, what has not been destroyed by the coming waves of destruction will be destroyed by the 7 vials of wrath, unless you have seized His offer to be delivered through it. He is purposing to call a people into a new era of time who will turn to Him, but sadly it will take much destruction just to get even this small flock to listen. This is the reason that it is going to take wave after wave of destruction, just to wake up this small group of people who will choose to live into the coming millennial era. Today I will close with Yeshua's storage and preparation instructions. Matthew 6. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust can corrupt them, and where thieves can break through and steal them. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust can corrupt, where thieves cannot break in to steal them. Because where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. If your thoughts and your plans are to try to live through the coming time of affliction on your own, or even within a group effort, you will not survive. You cannot hide from your Creator's wrath. He goes on and gives us the complete answer to what will deliver you. Verse 22, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is evil, or if it's not single on what it needs to be, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, great is that darkness. Most of you do not even know that you are evil if you have rejected the reason that you were put here. You're evil because your eye is not single on what it needs to be. We were put here to be molded by our Creator, to be made in His image. We were not put here to decide right from wrong for ourselves. Our eyes were to be single. They were to be focused on one thing, and that is being in agreement with Him who gave us life. If your light has been any other light other than this, and your focus has been elsewhere, your light has been darkness, and great is that darkness indeed. Going forward, your eye is going to have to turn from whatever is not from Him and focus on what will deliver you. None of you surfing gurus are going to outsurf the coming waves. None of you survivor experts will outthink your way through this without His hand, and continuing to worship Him in vain is not going to get His involvement in helping you or His deliverance. No amount of personal preparedness will deliver you unless that preparedness involves your surrender to your Creator's desire to continue to build His family and to be a part of what He's building. You're going to have to leave your desires and desire His kingdom with all of your being, and your eye is going to have to be single. What's on the other side of this is not anything that you're going to need a seed bank for. He has the seeds covered. You need to focus on the truth that will set you free, and His word is truth.